Hey everybody, Mike Verita. So I'm doing a quick follow-up video. I did a video on modulations the other day, and it opened a can of worms, I guess predictably, because people will say, okay, yeah, you can do modulations, but how do you do them and when do you do them? And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit. But before I do, I don't push my classes very often. But the truth is I've been doing them for like 5 years now. They're super popular. And if you really want to learn about this, any aspect of composing, writing and developing or writing for picture, specific types of modulations, the classes are super cheap. They're like $30. And right now there's 40% off for 4th of July. There's a coupon code, GLORY40, G-L-O-R-Y, the number 4, the number 0, GLORY40 at MikeVerita.com. And if you actually want to get better, like legitimately want to get better, try one of those classes. I've never had to get anybody their money back, but I will if you don't like it. If you want to learn, believe me, I want to teach you. And the classes are multiple hours, and they're always practical. Like I give you something that you can actually go right now to your piano or guitar and do it right now. It's not like a lot of abstract shit. That doesn't help us get better. And some people don't really want to get better. They just want to watch videos. But if you actually want skills, I promise I will give them to you across all this stuff. It's real hard to put in a YouTube video. I mean, like people watch YouTube videos like 5 seconds. They turn them off. So these are hours-long classes. So go to MikeVerita.com and try. You can get a class for $18 now. And they're hours. Anything. Pick anything. And then you can also send me stuff, and you can join my forum at redband.com, redbanned.com, and there's people who will all help you. You can send in your pieces like we do for Unleashed. So seriously, so sorry for the shill, but it's just that's like why I don't have a big YouTube channel, because I can't do 17 hours of fucking composition lessons on YouTube, but I will if you want to learn, because it's the best when you can control music and all that. All right, okay, so end of plug. But go save money if you want to. But anyway, so modulations. So the thing about any modulation, about a modulation, is you have to remember that we are storytellers. We were telling stories musically. And stories are almost always better when there's some conflict and resolution. In music, that's tension and release. If you have a 1 chord and a 4 chord and a 5/7 chord, that seventh, that dominant seventh, is the release. If you played a 1-4-5 progression and you just left, people fucking go crazy. Finish it. Yeah, because that tension is sitting there. All good stories have tension and resolution, and it's up to us to decide, how we present that tension and resolution. And different kinds of dissonances have different amounts of tensions. There's different tensions. I mean, a simple, like a 1-4-5, you think of a story in your head. There was a little doggy, and he was playing in the yard, and he almost lost his ball, but then he found it. It's very simple. That's not much of a tension. That's a fucking tension that needs release. And so we have to be thinking about the fact that different tensions suggest different types of releases. And there's a ton, you could tell, this is what I'm saying, you tell stories musically. And literally the way that the story's drama will unfold, the amount of tension and the kind of release literally dictates what you would do musically, which is why underscoring for film scores can work or not work. It's usually the degree to which it mirrors so what I'll do in my head is I'll tell a story. There was once a little doggy, and he was playing in the yard, and it was just a nice summer day, like any other day, with the tall, cool grass. And as he looked out the fence, he dreamed maybe of one day being able to explore the yard and see the other dogs. But then he spotted something. What was it? It was a biscuit. It was a very unusual biscuit. It was green and glowing, and it seemed to be hypnotically drawing him to it, making him want to eat it. He put it in his mouth. Suddenly, the doggy felt very unusual. He'd never felt like this before. I don't know. His paws started to get warm. His tail started to wag. He started lifting off the ground. Suddenly, he was flying. I don't know. And the point is that there's literally harmonic tensions and releases which dictate the flow of drama. which is also why it also means that as storytellers, we're going to be limited by our knowledge of drama, which is why I even have a film school 101 class, because we have to know something about storytelling. Otherwise, you would have no idea, well, when do I modulate? Forget how, and I'll talk about some of the hows in a second, but that's just the point, that a suspension is it's a different kind of unresolved tension than this. Or something. Something's not right. And so there's a time that amount of not right is more appropriate than others. And also why you have this is a huge giant universe, right? Like if you have a major tonality, and major tonalities are usually final, right? Like, you don't really have to say anything after that. Could be the end, could be the beginning. But then if you start going, suddenly that major tonality, there's other shit. It's not just major anymore. There's something, right? So it's got complexity and other things to it. And that's a different type of tension that needs release. A different type of tension, different type of release, based on what the dramatic needs are. And so a lot of times, if you're really aware of the drama when you're working on a film score, or even if you're writing for yourself, this is what I do, by the way. When I'm writing for myself standalone pieces, I'm thinking about the story. Pop tunes have that, right? Lots of times when they're just doing 1-4-5 and 1-4-5, and then for the bridge, they'll go down to the minor, because it's a development. It's like the second act. There's a setup, and then everything goes to shit or whatever in the second act, and there's a problem, and then it releases. This is basic drama stuff, and there's no reason not to recruit it in your own writing to help you along. Now, so that's that's essentially the when of it. And again, huge, giant, enormous topic. But again, we can talk about it. The how. Somebody said in one of the comments, well, the problem is you're a master of improvisation. Well, maybe. I've been doing it like 30 years, so I hope I'm not. That would suck. What if I totally sucked after 30 years? That would not be good. If I was trying, which I was trying. But anyway, the point is that, for myself, as I talk about, I think in the last video I said that when I'm at a place, that I see a whole bunch of options. Yes, I do. But one of the ways I'm teaching my little boy to think like this is to constantly look at a chord, like say a C chord. And we generally know that, say, the third note of the chord maybe is one of the most important notes, right? It's the one that decides if it's happy or sad, or it's suspended, you're not sure what it is, or it's diminished, or it's spacey, it's augmented, The third tells us an awful lot about it. Or the melody notes. And learn to, and just do little exercises where you say to yourself, well, what else can that be? Now, the truth is, it can be anything. The note C can be the root in C. It could also be the major seventh in a C major 7 chord, or the major seventh in a D flat major 7 chord. That's what else a C can be. Or it could be the major second in a B flat sus2 chord, or the third in an A minor, or the third in a A flat major. Or the fourth in a G sus. So the note C, and as with any note, they all can work for anything. The only question is whether or not we justify their role. So if we're doing a C major, and we think, well, what else can that be? Well, it could be anything. It can be this. That's the first thing we need to do, is be able to, at least for ourselves, immediately think of 5 or 10 or a million ways to repurpose a note. If I'm playing a C and I'm looking at that C, that's my top note, that's my melody note. My brain is seeing the A flat. It's also seeing the F, it's seeing the A minor, it's seeing this, it's seeing just literally, and this, I can see its role in all of these other chords because I practiced those. Just even doing chord inversions teaches you to start to see chords differently. I remember when I told my son to tell me the notes in a C sus4, and he goes, C, F, and G. And I said, what are the notes in an F sus2? And he goes, F, G, C. I just let him sit there. And he goes, wait, those are the same. And I'm like, exactly. And just let him discover that. And it starts to put in his brain, so that in his brain, he's starting to think about these things can all be other things and they can be used in different ways. So actually just getting familiar with the role that any one note is playing in a bunch of options is not something to take for granted. It's something worth practicing. But then the next question is, well, when is it okay then to go from a C to, when is that okay? And as I talked about in the last video, the answer is usually the degree to which it's predictable is going to make the strongest connection. And then when you've made that connection, surprises and things that are not normal or conventional or different then are welcome rather than confusing. So if I'm looking at that C and I just know that I want my melody to stay on that note, so my progression was, as a progression, that's not amazing, but neither is it confusing. Neither is it something that you haven't heard before in one degree or another. So armed with those two pieces of knowledge, one, that I can see its actual role in a bunch of other chords, which happen to also be, this is one of the tricks I teach about just learning to see things with the minimum amount of motion around them. So a combination of being able to see it in a lot of ways and being aware of chord progressions and whether they're normal or not helps me make my choices. And that's what makes somebody ultimately a master of improvisation, which improvisation is best just thought of as very, very fast composing. That's all. So to study this, when I have composition students, the very first thing we work on has got to be, well, let's just write basic melodies over a 1-4-5 progression, or where there is no progression, so that we can start to figure out or start to learn the vocabulary. How are we going to speak if we have no vocabulary? The vocabulary of chords. Start to learn your 1-4-5 progressions, and then you study this in pop music, and then write melodies over that, and then increase the sophistication of the chord progressions. You can get fucking crazy with a chord progression, but you'll lose your audience and yourself, and you'll never know what's right or wrong if you don't have a safe place to go to. If you start spinning out with all your chords, but you have no safe harbor when people are like, what the fuck is he talking about? And you can't bring them home. Well, this. Okay, I know. Oh, okay, I'm fine. Now where are you going to go? You can kind of, you can go anywhere. But you have to have a home base, and you have to learn that home base. There's no shortcut for it, and I can't even nobody can teach you this really on a YouTube video. You have to, on a video at all, you have to go and transcribe pop tunes or get sheet music for basic pop tunes and just take, God, Tom Petty made an entire fucking career out of 3 chords. So you can write, no shortage of people made careers out of 3 chords. So you can take a 1-4-5 and just spend all day writing melodies over it, and thus you've actually done both things, where you've learned to write a melody over a chord progression, but you've also learned what roles a given note will play inside of a chord progression. So you can get it from both directions. A good melody almost always works without any chords underneath it. You can intuit it. You can, if I go, 1 second. There you go, that's better. You hear the chords. You can just hear them. It's like nursery rhymes. Those are always like that. You can hear the chords. You can hear the 1, 4, 5 without even having to play a chord. And the reason that those work at all, those nursery rhymes work, is because underneath it, they're trading in on a chord progression that's very, very familiar. Somewhere in your life, you've heard those progressions, and so all you have to do is even suggest them in the melody or outline them, and then people are clear with it. But there is absolutely no shortcut to that except you studying, and that's a great exercise, is to start by, okay, I'm gonna write a melody for that. Just all day. All day, making yourself do melodies over simple progressions, to the point where you get so tired of it that you want to know what else you can say. Whatever it is. Again, there are no shortage of ways there's an infinite number of ways to modulate, and those can be learned by studying other modulations. The when comes from an understanding builds off of that, knowing whether or not you've lost your audience because you're in too unfamiliar territory, and also your inherent understanding of drama. Are we in the second act? Are we in the time for things to get more complicated? Or are we still in the setup in my movie here that I'm writing, my speech? If I'm doing this is my setup. I'm sort of teaching you the language of the movie, right? This is just things were fine. Now, second act, time for some development. This is a very unusual thing. It's kind of like, okay, this is different, but it's time for it now. It's time for it. You could do anything there, but you need to develop, because we're in the second act. We've already done the setup. Everybody gets the setup. I understand it wasn't that complicated a story, for fuck's sake. It's 1, 4, 5. Well, how complicated is that? So what else you got for me? You think you got the whole thing because I've just been doing this, but now I got this for you. And you're like, well, okay, this is different than I was expecting. Well, how do you know that chord to do? Well, first of all, I've studied a billion chords. I also just happen to know, or looking at it, I'm thinking, well, how tense do I want it to be? I was in 1, 4, 5. Do I really want the next chord to be? Is that really where I want to go from 1, 4, 5? Maybe, because it's real fucked up what happened. Or like I did with the little doggy. We were in this land, and I just knew that to create a spacey kind of thing, this one. Well, how do you know that? Well, 30 years is how I know that. But the bottom line is that if you don't know when to do it, then it doesn't even matter if you know those fancy words or fancy chords. You'll put them in the wrong place. Too soon, too late. So ultimately, we have to study dramatic structure. Outside of music. Music is another language. Don't think of it as a thing. It's like a language. It's exactly like it. Just you're making it too hard on yourself if you think of it in any other way. It's a language. So you study that. Study dramatic structure and get an idea. And again, you can study that on the simplest level in pop tunes. They work. There's a reason there's an A, B, or A, usually A, B, A, or A, B, A, 2 verses, the chorus, and then the verse again. Why is that such a common structure? Because it's a very basic dramatic structure. The B section is usually, if your A is, 1, 4, 5, it's so often that the B section is a minor. So often that it starts with a minor, where everything else has been major. Because that's a very, very common thing to do. A little bit of tension. you know? And in a pop tune, it's not going to get super tense, so it's just going to go down to the minor 6. If it's a fucking horror movie and you're all in these major worlds, you might hit this stuff. I mean, it might need that level of tension. And you can decide that based on the dramatic needs. So we can't get around both aspects of it. We have to know when. And we have to know dramatically how far do we have to go? What is the tension? Is it a little tension? Is it a lot of tension? And what is the harmonic way to say a little tension and the harmonic way to say a lot of tension? You can study chords. As you're sitting down and you're looking at the piano, just even being able to visualize it, and I'm biased, admittedly, about writing piano. Not everybody writes on piano. I can't even imagine not being able to do it, but that's me. That's my limitation. But as I'm doing that and I'm writing, and I found myself, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, it's time for the second act, and I need just a little bit of tension, just a little bit, then I know that just a little bit of something. Because in my mind, I'm going, well, let's see, it's the third of A flat, and A flat is this kind of tension against it, which isn't bad. It's also this, which isn't too much. The little motions on the piano, look at this. Look at this. Here's my C. It's just a little bit away. It's like literally just a little bit away to get to that A flat. And after I've been doing all this, then this is just a little bit. And also, here was that B flat, just literally a little bit away. Just literally a little bit away. It's a little bit of tension. Of course, also a little bit away is, so it doesn't necessarily, the fact that it's a little bit away doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be tense. But the point is that I can't, without all those things operating at the same time, without having an understanding of, well, when do I need to do this? What is the drama? And being able to literally take any one of my guiding tones, especially my melody. The melody is almost always the thing. You're following the melody. And you can think, you just look at those notes. Those notes could be anything. That's the same notes, but I put them in different roles, normally occurring roles in different chords, and suddenly that has a very different thing. So being able to simply look at a note and just think, well, I can picture a whole bunch of different roles from that relative to where I am right now. I'm in C. Relative to where I am, that same C can be that, or that, or that, or that. They all have different tensions. Now, which tension does this story require? It's this combination of skill sets. Give yourself a break if you're not a master of all this shit right off the bat. Even when you are, this stuff is really, really fucking hard. Have you ever noticed how many composers there are in the world versus how many we've ever heard of? There's a reason. This is one of the hardest, most complicated, and beautifully rewarding disciplines, lives even, that you can lead, but easy. Not for nothing. You can go to the gym regularly, have a good diet, and chances are, if you're following any one of your muscles will get bigger. It is not guaranteed in music that you're going to find brilliance even if you apply all this stuff, but you damn sure don't have a shot unless you try. So slow down, give yourself a break, and just realize that every one of these components are inseparably linked, and they're all linked to who you are as a person. There's no boring people ever wrote any interesting music. In fact, no boring people ever made any interesting anything. So having an idea of drama and a philosophy and something to say, something literally to say, is inextricably a part of being a good composer. Otherwise, then you're just a fucking wordsmith who just comes up with fancy ways to say things that aren't particularly interesting. That doesn't last. So individually, you can study various chords. You could get a jazz harmony book, and you could learn all these, complicated jazz harmonies. And those are fine. Those are good words to have in your vocabulary, but you don't want to be that douchebag who pulls out the big word in the wrong context because you just don't know it. You don't want to be that guy. So to avoid that, you still have to know the context, and you get to that slowly. Start with simple progressions, and then move into maybe jazz progressions. Jazz progressions are where John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and tons of those guys learned some of their more sophisticated writing, because in the end, you're jazz guy, we're all like, we're like 1-4-5, like what else have you got for me? And so we learn more complex chord progressions. But we're also in the danger then of fucking losing the audience, which is why if you're not conditioned to it and you walk into one of those New York traditional jazz places and the sax player is going, and everyone's like, what the fuck is he doing? And the jazz guys in the audience are going, yeah. Like, what are you listening to? Well, we listen to that shit all day. It's like drummers. Drummers, we can subdivide to 16th notes all the time, and we can hang with rhythms that other people can't fucking hang with. And we're just like, can't you feel that? No, where are you? Oh yeah, no, the whole thing's been turned around by a 16th note for 2 bars. Because we can do the other stuff. So we want the more sophisticated. This is what we're in danger of at all times. So start with your simple progressions. Get them under your head, in your head. So if somebody calls you on a pop gig, you're like, I could probably play that tune, because it's only going to be one of about 6 different chord progressions. In fact, I'm actually doing an 80s cover gig this coming week, and it was like 22 charts, and they were all like, it was just like, I mean, whatever. It was Hold On Loosely, and well, we were also doing Fly Like an Eagle, and Don't You Forget About Me, and Power of Love, and all these tunes. And it's like, okay, well, if it's not that progression, it's going to be this progression. It's always one of a handful. You can pretty much play that gig without even practicing. But then as you start to get bored or comfortable with those, or if you master those and you can write melodies for those, now maybe you get yourself a jazz reel book and you start doing, I don't know, Night in Tunisia, Mr. PC, and Satin Doll, or other things that have more sophisticated chords and more sophisticated progressions. Just move yourself up. You learn to play them, and you look at the chords, and okay, now my chord vocabulary is developing. And while you're doing that, you're actually doing those exercises of being able to visualize every note that you're playing in other contexts, in other chordal contexts. If you only know 4 chords, then you're going to be limited about how many other ways you can repurpose C. You have to know other chords in order to know what else you can do with it. So give yourself an opportunity to learn more chords so that you can visualize more options for it. But you're not going to get around the when. And the way to do that, honest to God, is study fucking drama, study Greek dramas, go take a film screenwriting class, and learning 3-act structure. Fucking, they've been doing this for 2,000 years. You can read Aristotle. You know what I mean? But storytelling is part of your job, man. You can't get around it. So there you go. Kind of a little ranty, but there's tons of stuff in there. And like I said, again, I teach all this stuff. But you can learn it with me or without me. And I've given you a bunch of ways to do it, but you got to go and do it, and you got to take it easier on yourself and give yourself time. I mean, part of the reason I've dedicated my life to this since I was 5 years old is because I knew that no matter how long I lived, I'd never be a master of it. I'd always have a shit fucking ton to learn, and I do. And so that's part of the thing about it. Slow down, And even then, you can still get a job. You get to a level and have a job and a life and pay bills and all that. That's also doable. But this is how to do it, step at a time, like that. And and if you want to know more, if you want to dig in, if you don't want to be one of those dudes just want to watch television on YouTube, join us on the forum at redband, redbanned.com. And come and post your pieces. And the communities there is super helpful. If you want to learn, there's people who want to help you. I mean, if you really want to put in the work, fucking, yeah, dude, we'll help. Of course. What's worse? How can you imagine turning your back? Somebody, I want to learn better. Please help me. Yes, I will help you. But if somebody says, just give it to me, I can't. Nobody just give it to you. I can give you some tricks and some tips, and I can give you something practically to do. But sooner or later, nobody can give you the marathon, time in the freestyle. You got to get in the pool and swim. Michael Phelps can't teach you to do that unless you get in the pool and swim. Then he'll give you some tips. So jump in the pool and in the deep end, and we'll help. And if there are any videos you know, a specific thing that you want me to put up here, let me know and put it in the comments, and I'll do it. My YouTube channel isn't my thing, obviously. I mean, obviously, you know, it's not my thing. But little snippets or whatever, that's useful and good, and there's like no downside. So let me know. All right, that was way longer than I wanted it to be, but it's fine. Okay, thanks.